welcome to Wholesome Roots. Well, it's another rainy day. We've had thunderstorms off and on all day, showers and sprinkles all day. Sort of a gloomy day, but it is what you can make out of it, is what I always say. So on rainy days like this, I like to choose a project, usually in the house or in the barn. And today I'm going to be working in the barn on building another chicken tractor. Well, I've flirted with the idea of making an instructional video start to finish on how to make one, and the problem with that for me is I never have time to do a whole chicken tractor in one day and make one consistent instructional video. So I've decided that I would just show you guys how I make one and explain one, showing you through all my tools and supplies that I have laid out, what's required, what I think's required. I can show you a work in progress, and I can show you some of my finished products, and I can give you some ideas of what I like and what I don't like about some of my chicken tractors, because I've made several of them. So I have a pretty good idea of what works for me, what works best for our situation here, and you guys can take from that what you like and apply it to your own if you do decide to build one. These can be very affordable. If you're resourceful enough, you could make one of these for free or with very limited costs. If you have the tools already, if you have friends or know of places that you can find the wood or the wire, you really could make these for little to no cost to yourself. Only the time, and sometimes you have to purchase things, fence staples and whatnot. So I'm gonna go into the barn now, and I'm gonna show you guys the things that are required for making one of my chicken tractors. Alright, so I have laid out on this table what I think is probably all of the tools and supplies that I use to make a chicken tractor, and I think I have them from left to right, a good order of how I use them. Let me explain some of the stuff to you. So if you are salvaging wood from a pallet, you might need one of these. If it's nailed together, a pry bar, they're not very expensive. You could probably borrow one from somebody, or you might already have one. If you're using brand new wood or already have cut lumber, then you might not need one. Hi, Liam. Then measuring. You're going to need a measuring tape to measure your wood to the right size. I do my tractors in 3 different sizes: 8 foot by 4, 7 foot by 5, and 10 foot by 5. I personally like my 8 by 4s and my 7 by 5s the best, but it just depends on how many chickens you plan on putting inside, how big or small you need to make it. So you'll need a measuring tape to measure your wood. This is a builder's square. Even though it's a triangle, it's to help you make proper angles and corners. This comes in handy for cutting my corner brace pieces to getting the right 45-degree angle that I'm looking for, and it also has a handy leveler on it if you need to make sure anything's level. For cutting, I use this skill saw, which is a circular saw. It's only a skill saw if it's the brand name skill saw, which that's not really very important. But anyway, a lot of people call it a skill saw. It's a circular saw. That's what I use to cut my wood. Once the wood's cut, I put it together using these deck screws. which all of these screws that you see in the box here, I salvaged. I got these out of a pallet, and so therefore I'm reusing these, and I didn't have to spend any money on them. That's where the resourcefulness comes in again, where you can salvage lumber, you can salvage screws. You just have to keep your eyes open. So for putting my wooden frame together, I use a drill with the right bit for these deck screws. If you buy these screws at the store, they come with the right size bit, so that's helpful if you go to the hardware store. You can know that. Next, for cutting the wire, I use two different kinds of wire. I use a field fencing or a welded wire as the more sturdier wire for the first layer, and then I use chicken wire on top of that. So you have two layers of wire on these chicken tractors. These big bolt cutters are better for cutting the field fencing. I have the smaller wire cutters. I use those for a long time cutting the bigger wire, and it's really hard on your hands. This makes it a whole lot easier. So you can do it with just wire cutters, but I recommend getting a pair of bolt cutters. For attaching that wire to the tractor itself, you can buy these at a hardware store, fence staples, and they're really good for holding down the welded wire, and you just hammer it around with your hammer. And then for the chicken wire, when you put that over your welded wire, a staple gun with staples. So that's what I use for that. For fastening the chicken wire to the welded wire, I use these wire cage clips. I think these were like $3 at the hardware store or the feed store. I can't remember which one. My first tractor, we already had some of these from another project, so that first tractor, I didn't count that towards the cost. So a lot of these things, if you already have them, you don't have to count them towards the cost. You can borrow these things from your friends or family. That can help you out. You can salvage them from pallets and stuff. You know, it's no cost to you. So you can be resourceful and make a pretty good chicken tractor. Rowan's working on his own barn project, securing that piece of wood to make a better shelf.
Yeah, I'm actually hammering this nail inside this wood so the table can be tight enough so when I stand on it so it can't fall.
Alright, so here is the beginnings of one of my chicken tractors. And you can ignore that stuff in the middle. The boys think they're building things to help, so just ignore the bucket and pan and that wood. Anyway, first thing I do to start a chicken tractor is build the frame. I measured my wood, which in this case, this wood came off of a pallet, a really big pallet that I salvaged from work, and it just so happened to have a bunch of 7-foot pieces and a bunch of 5-foot pieces. So this is going to be a 7x5 chicken tractor. So I did measure it just to make sure that the pieces were all the same length, and they were. So 7 foot long and 5 foot wide. And then, like I said before, using those deck screws, I just screw the pieces in flush with the longer piece, so my 7 foot comes to my 5. Important thing for me to disclose, I am not a trained carpenter, so everything that I've learned about making these, I've basically figured out on my own. So some of you might have more carpentry skills than me, and you might have better ways of doing this stuff. And if you do, I mean, say it in the comments. You know, I learn as I go. You guys might learn stuff from us, but I can always learn new things from people that know more than me. So anyway, I figured out putting it like this, joining it this way on one end, and then on the other end doing it the opposite way makes a stronger structure. And I do that to all four corners. Using that builder square, I measured some wood from a plank I salvaged off the side of the road, and I cut 45-degree angles and put it flush inside the corner. This is for more support, and this makes the frame very stable. My skills have gotten a little bit better since I started. My first ones, I had my support pieces on top of the 2x4, which, I mean, it still worked, but I think this is more sound and more sturdy, and it's flush. On this end, which is going to be my door end, this is where I'm going to put my nesting box and where I'm going to put my waterer. So the nesting box can go here and be sitting on this, and the waterer can go there and be sitting on that. My corner pieces on the end are not as big, which they don't need to be. They're just there for support, you guys. Okay, so then after you build your frame, that's when you need to attach your wire. Right here I have this field fencing. Some people call it no climb field fencing. You can use welded wire. Some people call it hog wire, a different type. Just something kind of sturdy. The openings are going to be kind of big, and you remedy that with your chicken wire later on. This is just a good support, and to make it go over your tractor correctly, I've figured it out that you need a double piece of whatever your length is. So, or your width, I should say. If my width in this case is 5 foot, I cut a 10-foot piece of this wire. And since the 10-foot piece goes a little over halfway, I had to cut a second one. So I have two 10-foot pieces that will go over the frame width-wise. And since the holes are bigger on one end and smaller on the other, I put my bigger holes in the center. So when I lay my second piece of wire over, it's gonna cover some of that gap. And I attach it to my frame using those fence staples. Right now I just have it attached a little just to hold it in place. And I'm gonna go over it in a few minutes and just put even more staples. I like to put a staple on each piece of wire. And I have a good helper with me. This is Liam. He's helping me today. Say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
Okay, so I spent some time hammering in my fence staples, and you see that I've done every single of the vertical wires coming down to make it more stable. And then occasionally I like to do one on the horizontal bars on the bottom, and that's to prevent slipping. You see it's not going to go down because you don't want your wire to be touching the ground at all. You'll be scraping the ground and ripping up grass and stuff. So try to keep it, you know, about 1 inch or so above ground level. And now that I have all of my fence stapled on, you can see that the structure has become more stable. And the two overlapping pieces compensate a little bit for the bigger gap because I'm using the field fencing in this case. If you're not using field fencing, then it doesn't matter what direction you put your wire on. But I like to keep, with the field fencing, the smaller pieces on the ends where the gap is smaller, and it gradually increases And once you cover this with the chicken wire, you don't have much to worry about. And also when you put your tarp over the top, you're going to cover up a lot of the bigger gaps. So and once you add the field fencing or welded wire to your ends, the end on the outside is easier because you just need one big piece and it just kind of folds over, and you use your clips to secure it, and it'll become even more stable. And on the door end, when you have your door in place with your door frame, this end becomes a lot more stable as well. And for my door on this tractor, I salvaged an old cabinet door from a garage I was cleaning out at my work. I just unscrewed it from the cabinet and brought it home. I'm going to build a frame around it. I have a solid door. I've done the doors before, building them with wire so it'll be open, which, I mean, that's good. It takes a little more time to do that, but what I like about the solid door is this, in combination with the tarp, gives more of a protected area from sun and wind and rain and just about all the elements. So I do kind of like the solid door. I think this is going to be really nice once it's finished. Liam's making barn floor angels. That looks fun. You having fun? Okay, so there's a brief break in the rain, and this allows me to come out here to show you some of my finished products. And don't judge me, please. They are not perfect. I've gotten better as I've made them, and I'm happy with them, but I see the flaws in some of them. This one here is the very first one that I made, and it still works. It still has chickens in it. Some of the things that I've learned over time, this one is probably my least secure, because you see I don't have any welded wire here. I only have the chicken wire, and I should probably fix that at some point. Right now I'm going with strength in numbers, so it probably isn't the most vulnerable, but since I have so many tractors, we haven't had really an issue with predators coming up on this one. But that is a big risk, y'all. I do not recommend doing it with just the chicken wire. If you do it with just the chicken wire, you're leaving yourself very vulnerable for predators to rip it open. Raccoons could rip right through that. Dogs could rip right through that. So just keep that in mind. You really do need the 2 layers. And you see here, once you have your welded wire going across the width of it, you cut pieces to size to put on the ends. Here's one of my 10 by 5s. Good example. I have very solid sidewalls also, and you see how I use those clips to clip the chicken wire to the field fencing or welded wire or whatever you use. You'll need a door. As for the door, I was creating my own doors with wood and hardware cloth. That's what they call that. That's a weird name for it, but that's what they call it, hardware cloth. And just to show you guys, to keep showing you, chicken wire on top of your main structured wire. This is a welded wire. You see, it's very uniform. The field fencing we already had from a previous project, so we just use what we have. So anyway, field fencing, welded wire, with chicken wire on top. I can't stress that enough. Again, with, without, with, without. It's better with it. It's more work, but your structure is going to be more secure. I put tarps. I buy heavy-duty tarps for cheap at a bargain store in our town. You probably have one too. Check your Big Lots, Ollie's, whatever. The tarps aren't very expensive at all. This white one here isn't actually a tarp. It's a sign for like a gym or something. I have it upside down, so all you see is the white part, but it was just an advertisement sign. For the doors though, I've done different styles of doors. I gotta say, building a frame is nice. You don't have to, but building that frame is really nice because there's no sharp edges to cut yourself when you reach in for the water or for the eggs. So yeah, building a frame is nice. This next one that I'm about to make, I'm going to be reusing some cabinet doors. Okay, what else? Next, something else I wanted to combat was the friction of when I pull these tractors. They pull rather easily on their own, but I tried something. You can see this here. I built like it's PVC pipe I've cut in half, and that makes these tractors slide across the ground way easier. Some of my tractors don't have it, and I just wanted to see how much of a difference it makes. It really does make a difference. It makes these tractors glide across the ground. So that's an optional thing. You could do that, you don't have to. I like it. I'm going to do that from now on, and I might retrofit some of these other tractors whenever I get a chance. You'll also want to build a perch inside. I've used pieces of wood for that in some of them. I've used branches in others. Again, I mean, just use what you can. You can learn from what I've done. You can apply your own ideas. You might have better ideas than me. I'm not claiming to be any sort of expert here. I'm just a guy that had to solve a problem, and I came up with this idea, and it works for us. Nesting box. You see in here, I have a milk crate. Milk crate works pretty well sometimes. Some of my other tractors, you can see the milk crate doesn't work. They kick all their bedding out and they lay their eggs outside of it instead. So I'm planning on taking out all these milk crates and replacing them with the Tidy Cats litter box. Not litter box, but the kitty litter box. It has a lip already on it, on the end, if you just take the lid off. And the chickens really like using that, and they tend to keep their bedding material inside of it, the straw or the sheep's wool. They'll keep it in there. This tractor, you see the door I used here? This is an old door off of a pet carrier. So be resourceful. You can make these things, something similar, pretty easily. I've just had to use what I have on hand. So each one is a similar concept, but they're all unique in their own way. Some of them need a little work. Right now they're all functional. They have chickens inside. The chickens get moved daily and they seem to be pretty happy. So talky McTalk, bloggy vlog. vlog applesauce and chim chom goobly gob. I totally just forgot. I forgot what I was gonna say. Edit that. Okay. Alright, so I've just shown you guys what I use to make my tractors, how finished product looks. I've shown you some of a work in progress. That's about as close as I can get to making an instructional video in one day, is just showing you what I use, how I do it, and a work in progress and a finished product. So now I can finally go back in the barn and do some work on that unfinished one. Okay, so the rainy day went away and the sun came out and all the goats came out to play. You like that, don't you? You didn't know I was a poet. Well, I'm not really, but that just kind of came out. But anyway, so to close this out again, since I started this back up, you might need to edit this, maybe not. I just thought of another thing, that these tractors work for us in our situation, in our environment. If you live further up north and you encounter really low temperatures and a lot of snow, these might not be the best bet for you. The structures are pretty stable here. Keep in mind, if you plan on being around a lot of trees, if a tree falls or a big limb falls, they're not really safe from that. We tend to keep ours out in the open more, so they're a little more safe from those kind of threats. And as for low temperatures, we're in Georgia, and it doesn't get too cold here. If we know it's going to be blistering cold, well then we'll throw some garden frost fabric over all of the tractors. We have a piece that can cover every single one, just one piece. We'll stretch it over, hold it down with some bricks, and we only do that when we know it's going to be really cold. So just keep those kind of things in mind. Do what works for you. Be resourceful. We love being resourceful here. If you haven't noticed, we go out of our way to reuse things and stuff like that. So anyway, oh, and I need to address something that some of you might notice. Something again is different about me. I have yet again had to purchase a new pair of sunglasses. Yeah, the pair I had before I crushed at work. My replacements, they broke when I opened them one day, so I did some shopping on Amazon and found these polarized flying fisherman sunglasses, and they are awesome. I love them. I love not spending a whole bunch of money on sunglasses. I don't see the point in dropping a couple $100 on something that could get crushed in my line of work. So, like a wise band once said, go and get yourself some cheap sunglasses. Thank you for watching Wholesome Roots. Like and share this video. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And check us out next time. Good night. Thank you for watching Wholesome Roots. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, share it with your friends. They're cheering for me. Anyway, like and share and subscribe. And thank you for watching Wholesome Roots.